From the campus of the University of North Carolina at Pembroke, this is Sessions at Old Main. Today, the basics of brass with Dr. Joanna Hersey.
Welcome to Sessions at Old Main. Today we have a brass instrument music education show. We're going to talk about and listen to the 5 brass instruments. The 5 brass instruments, which are here on the floor, represent the 5 categories of the human voice, the range of the instruments. We will talk about the trumpet, the horn, the trombone, the euphonium, and the tuba, which can be thought of as the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass voices. You might compare them to the violin, viola, cello, and bass of the string world. And this is my family, the brass family. My name is Joanna Hersey, and I am the Associate Professor of Tuba and Euphonium here at the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. So we're going to begin with a little bit of a background that a brass instrument at its very core is simply a tube. And with a tube, sound will vibrate. And I brought along a great example. This is a wonderful children's toy. This is a music company that makes, they're plastic tubes, there's nothing special, but they sound, air inside a tube will vibrate, and depending on how long the tube is, we'll get a different pitch. And these are called boom whackers, and they're great for kids. Public schools can get them, they're very inexpensive, and they will pitch. So when you do this is a C that's been cut, and this is an E. So you can get a chord, that's my major third, and the kids, for very little money, can make up songs and dances with them. Now the tube is vibrating, I'm not blowing into it. A brass instrument, as many of you know, would be blown into, but this is an example of how, without lip vibration, we still have enough air in the tube to make a pitched vibration. These are great fun, and they come in major and minor, and they're all different colors, and kids love to work on them. I can actually blow into this and make a sound. One of the most interesting things about being a brass player is that so much of it is involved in my lips. We call them chops. And my lips will have to correspond to the proper note to get it to speak. This is a very basic tube, but the trumpet and the trombone and the tuba, these are all just more complicated tubes. So if I were to play this, it does not have a mouthpiece on the end. I can vibrate my lips and get pitch without there being a tube, which goes a little bit like this. I don't actually need the instrument because I can vibrate pitch. If I did that in the tube, it would be a little bit hollow and fuzzy. We need a little bit more clarity on the end, which is where the brass mouthpiece comes in. But at its very core, we have instruments like the conch shell, the shofar, which is a ram's horn trumpet. These are instruments that go way back to the very beginnings of time. And from those developed other tubes, and when metal work began, we began making metal trumpets. Trumpet is the top instrument in our 5 brass. This is a trumpet. Trumpets have been played since long ago. In King Tut's tomb in ancient Egypt, which is about 3000 BC, there was a trumpet made of metal, which is pretty great. So the trumpet really just has 2 main parts. It has a mouthpiece. When I played in the red tube, it didn't resonate real well and was not clear. The mouthpiece is a bell-shaped, bigger on the front than it is on the back. And this is the start of my tube. So like the red and yellow tubes, my tube starts here, it runs along, and it runs out the bell. The bell is flared to throw the sound just a little bit out. The trumpet at its core does not need to have valves, but these are the valves. This has lovely piston valves. When we get to the bigger instruments, I'll show you. So the idea would be the valve opens and closes additional tubes. This is second valve, and this little extra bit will change the note down. So we can get pitched sounds. If you watch old Renaissance and early Baroque trumpet playing, there will be no valves in the historic instruments. So the trumpet mouthpiece, we can buzz it. But the mouthpiece gives it a clarity. And this is true of all of the 5 brass instruments. So this being the soprano, equivalent to the violin, the trumpet is the highest and most brilliant. It is often used for fanfares. It's soft. There's often many of them to get the full effect. And as I said, it can have valves or not. But that's our soprano voice. But then another very old instrument is the horn. Sometimes we hear this called the French horn. This is a modern double horn. It's full of tubes. And it has an even bigger bell, but has the same idea, a cone-shaped mouthpiece that starts our tube. And it winds all the way around through, depending on what buttons I press, what valves I press, and ends up coming out the bell. Now, the horn is actually played with the fingerings of the left hand, which is the only brass instrument that we do that. And as you can see, I'm not holding it out here. I'm holding my hand in the bell. Often we would sit to play the horn. My hand is not closing off, because if I did that, we really don't have much sound. So my hand is somewhat letting some of the sound come through. And if I wanted to close it, that's what's called stopped horn. And horn is an absolutely beautiful, more alto-voiced registered instrument. And there would be, for example, 4 of these in an orchestra. And some of our modern orchestra classics, the sound of the horn section coming through a little bit lower than the trumpets really provides a nice color change. So that's the horn. Then we come to our tenors, of which there are 2 that are similar. The first and most common being the trombone. The trombone is fun because we can do glissandos, which is the special feature of the trombone. The trombone is the same thing. I have a mouthpiece, it's bigger. And we can hear that we've moved down from the soprano through the alto into the tenor register. And if I play my trombone, the tube goes all the way around, it comes down and out the bell. And the glissando, the slide, it actually comes all the way off. And we can check if there's any water in there. Sometimes there is. So the slide is what makes the trombone unique and what makes it appeal so much to young people. So if I start out here, I can glissando straight up. I don't need valves. All of the other instruments are valved. Which is, again, kids love that. So the trombone is often thought to be a heavenly instrument. If it's an orchestra piece and there is a need for heavenly motion, it's often in the trombones. And so the trombone has that beautiful, mellow, open sound. It is a cylindrical sound. That is the trombone. Now the mouthpiece for that trombone, that middle-sized mouthpiece, is also the same one that I would play this instrument with. Now this, many of you will be familiar as a baritone horn. We also call it the euphonium here in the US. Same mouthpiece, I can transfer. Same tenor octave, the same exact register, but this is conical. Brass instruments, the tube either stays the same the whole way until the bell. That would be a cylinder, cylindrical, or we have it enlarging toward the bell. And you can see on this euphonium, it starts and it's small only for a little bit, slowly, slowly widens. So that's conical. So the euphonium will be more resonant and a little rounder than the trombone sound. So a trained ear can start to tell the difference. This one is silver-plated. Brass instruments can be silver or brass-plated. It has 4 top action piston valves, and then there is a thumb valve underneath, which I can operate. And I have a performance coming up for you of a Bach saraband from Bach's Violoncello Suite No. 1, and you will see that I engage that 5th for a low D. So I'd like you to listen to the euphonium solo on the Bach saraband. And then lastly, in our family of brass, we come to the bass voice, which is the tuba. And here today we have two tubas, a large and a small. The first one is pitched in the key of F, and that means that the tube is just the right length to resonate in F if one doesn't press a valve. And this is the same idea. The piston valves would move and change and shift the air into the side panels there. This is a F tuba, and so it is a little lighter than the large one. So the tuba is the lowest voice, but even it can go into the trombone and euphonium register. So this is the F tuba. And again, the mouthpiece for this is quite large. My whole mouth will fit in. It is a large hole for the opening. And then it still comes to a pretty small at the base to fit into the receiver. The bigger tuba, which is pitched in C, so the tube is longer so that I can have a C, this mouthpiece, and I brought along, this is big enough that a pencil dropped will fall right through. So it's large enough to take a good column of air, a good amount of force, and it also will cover my whole mouth when I am prone. So none of the rest of the mouthpieces the pencil would fit through, just to give you an idea. The size of this is so much larger. Again, we're resonating a larger column. So this is the bottom bass voice. When I play an orchestra, there will be one tuba, and we would play things like Tchaikovsky and Mahler, the louder, larger symphony composers. And we have a couple of performances lined up for you on tuba, but before that I wanted to show you one of the really great things that you can do to change the color of all of the brass instruments, but I brought mine with you, is a beautiful mute. This is a lovely new fiberglass mute. It is somewhat adjustable. It has Velcro. And so composers will ask on all of the brass instruments for the musician to use a mute to change the tone color, perhaps be more quiet in a quieter moment of woodwind and string writing. And it sounds pretty neat. It's awfully big, but it goes right in here. And you can hear that it will muffle and mute the sound a little bit. It's a little crooked. There we go. And then again, if I take that back out, you can be reminded of the resonance of the instrument. So last on our show today, we have two more tuba pieces for you. We have a performance of Hildegard von Bingen, an arrangement of mine of the music of the medieval composer Hildegard von Bingen. One of our UNC Pembroke students, Max Mensing, who is a music education major, will be performing a performance of Hildegard von Bingen. And then we will close with the two of us, he and I, performing a duet by a composer from the classical era, so a contemporary of Mozart, and on Dante. So thank you very much, and we hope you enjoy them.